Hey there, this is Susan Bach welcoming you to another edition of Fabulous Feature Friday. This is a weekly event where I interview one of the members of our Facebook group, and I'm delighted today to be interviewing Anita Belitz, who is one of our international members. She's joining us from Switzerland. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really happy to be here.
And I'm delighted that you are with us today. I'd like to, first of all, just read a short introduction that Anita has provided to us because she has a background and her journey is just so in alignment with mine, and we have so much in common. At the same time, I believe just by reading the background, you're going to have some insight into Anita and understanding that the journey she's taken, although it might be different than yours, is nonetheless a journey that has brought her to where she is today. So Anita is a career transition coach who went through a successful career of 20 years, only to find that she wanted more than she could find in her line of work. She has become a coach and mentor who uses her experience and expertise to help others discover a career they love. So welcome, Anita.
Thank you, Susan.
So we were just talking about the journey before I started recording. So please share with our audience your journey.
Great, thank you. I was one of these people who, from kind of a young age, I was blessed to get into a great career. I was so focused, though, on success that I missed a lot of kind of red flags along the way, telling me that maybe I wasn't exactly in line with what I really needed to be doing. So essentially, I had a fantastic job. I was making good money. I loved the people that I was working with. But there was something that was kind of nagging me that was telling me like, I don't actually totally love what I'm doing. But I was really focused. I really, really wanted to succeed by whatever standards. I wanted to, kind of get to the highest rung on the corporate ladder. I wanted to be making good money. I wanted to be, financially comfortable. I wanted my parents, my husband, my kids to be proud of me, and I wanted to provide well for them so that we would have a comfortable situation. But, I had to really work hard and spend a lot of time doing that, make a lot of sacrifices, and I made it. I was so excited. I got to basically the highest position that I could get into at my workplace, but I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and I couldn't believe it. The job wasn't at all really what I had expected, although I think I would have known if I thought through it a little bit more, but it was a lot of politics. I wasn't excited about the work I was doing. And a big problem was that I felt like a fake because essentially I'm somebody who I'm kind of maternal and I like a connection with people. And I felt like in that position, I couldn't be like that at all. I felt like I had to be I had to be careful not to be a bossy witch, if you see what I mean. So I couldn't believe it. I thought, this is what I wanted, so I was going to make it work. And I was looking for different solutions about how to kind of deal with my dissatisfaction at what was happening. And I heard a kind of lifestyle strategist who said something about this idea that we all have a life plan, whether we're conscious of it or not. There's this plan that we have that, is how we think our lives should be. And if our life isn't going the way that our life plan is, then we're never really going to be kind of contented. And this really set off a light bulb for me because I kind of started saying, I don't think I've ever thought really about what I want. I think I just was following, society's climb the ladder, get the titles, and I started thinking, okay, there's something behind this. And I did the work of really kind of considering what I wanted. And I thought I was really clever. I thought I was going to be able to basically mold my current situation in a way that I was going to be able to line things up. And so I decided that I would have to take a step back. I reduced my workload. I focused my activities in one area. I got to have this flexibility, right? I got more time for myself, more time for my family. And I was looking forward to be able to connect with these people in the organization that I had actually known very well before, and I kind of wanted to get back in contact with. And so that's what I did. And I thought it was going to be, like happiness galore, and and it wasn't. And I couldn't believe it again. And I just thought, what is the matter here? There's something that's really wrong. First, I realized I had some issues, right? Like I actually was having a harder time with kind of, like less compensation than I thought that I was going to have. I thought, I was going to be so happy on the other side that was going to make up for it. And on top of it, I wasn't really connecting and making the community in that group that I wanted to do. And so, I just thought, oh, great. Now I'm making less money and I'm still unhappy. Oh. So it was like a step in the wrong direction. And so this time I thought, okay, do I have to change my job, or do I just suck it up? Maybe this is just how it is. Maybe I'm just being too demanding. And I couldn't keep it in anymore. Oh. I just couldn't do it. And
I'm feeling your pain. Oh.
Well, I think it's a lot of people's story, this one. Oh. I mean, this is why I'm sharing it at this level, because I think a lot of people go through this. But thank you. But then I was talking to people who were close to me, and I heard myself saying, this isn't what I want. I want this and I want that. And I thought, oh, wait, listen to yourself, Anita, and I realized that I hadn't gone all the way in kind of aligning what I was doing with what I really wanted for myself. And one really important element in my life plan is this connection with people. I love to connect with people. I love to help encourage people and help them to get to where they want to go. And so the way that I addressed that was I started mentoring people, and mentoring led to coaching. And now I work with people in coaching where they're going through the same kind of need for clarity that I went through, and I help them find that clarity and recognize the issues and help to just adjust things where it's necessary. And so what I wanted to say is, through all of my experience, I think one of the most important things I've learned is you really have to take the time to decide what's right for you, so that you can make sure that what you're doing in your business or in your private life really gels with what you want for yourself. Because until you do that, you will never really be content. So that's my story.
Oh, thank you for that. That it was my story. I swear the similarities are just uncanny. The amount of time that we both spent in corporate, this striving to achieve society's level of success, and when doing so, feeling absolutely empty and miserable on the inside, and then going through this soul-searching journey to say, what is that I want my life really to be like? What's important to me? So I applaud you for going through that, because, well, speaking from my perspective, it's painful.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I said I think it is painful. I think it's a difficult thing to acknowledge that you've been striving for something for so long, which actually isn't what you want. You feel like, you've lost a lot of time. People around you don't understand. They think you're crazy. Like, you have this fantastic job. You're making a lot of money. You're around fantastic people. What's kind of the matter with you? And I think that was something that was difficult for me the first time around, to say, like, okay, I need to step back from this kind of power position, right? And focus more on what I want. But then to acknowledge a second time that I still wasn't happy, I think for those around me, they kind of thought, well, what is it going to take for you to really be happy? And that's what I had to figure out. I had to figure out, why am I unhappy? And it really came down to not respecting my own wishes, my own needs, my own preferences. And that wasn't anybody else's fault but mine. I think that's a hard thing to face up to.
It is. And I want to put that kind of a positive spin on that too, Anita, is that you probably would not have found the space of alignment that you're in today had you not gone through that journey. So exactly. As uncomfortable and painful and questioning as it could be, that yet is part of the journey that brings us to the the solid foundation that we are both coming from today. Would you agree with that?
Completely.
Yeah, it's like the journey of the business or of the entrepreneur. It's not a straight line. It definitely is this and very roundabout and convoluted. And yet, I think what's important for both you and I is that our decision was to continue with the journey rather than stopping because it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Good.
I think, yeah, go on.
You mentioned a couple of things. If I can just refer back to your story for a minute, is that okay?
Sure, no problem.
You mentioned that there were some red flags that came up, and I would like you to share maybe just 2 or 3 examples of the red flags. And second of all, what was also resonated with me is when you were sharing that other people were saying, well, you know, what's the matter with you? Are you crazy? You have all of the external trappings of success. Why would you want to walk away with that? And the power of that message coming through to you. And then I heard you say, so then you were starting to ask yourself, what's wrong with me? So 2 things, some of the red flags, and then the conversation that you had with yourself regarding what's wrong with me.
Okay. So the red flags for me, I mean, first of all, I always had this kind of nagging numbness, I guess, when I would speak to people about my job. I felt like I often had to kind of convince myself, along with them, that this was a great career. I think that was one flag. Another flag was I was working so hard, so many hours, traveling all the time, totally putting my family on the side. And I was convinced that doing that was, you know, in the interest of my family, but it was wearing me down to the bone. Yeah. And I just kept pushing through, you know? And I think the last thing, but which is also very telling for me, is that I would get into situations with, you know, very high level people in the industry, and I was petrified. And I mean, I've been in this industry for a long time, so it's not that I don't know what I'm doing. It's just somehow I was very shut down about some of the people, you know, and I think if you really listen to that kind of thing, you have to ask yourself, what is that? I mean, that's not just about, you know, being kind of young and inexperienced and, you know, not knowing how to present or whatever. There's something kind of underlying that you need to look deeper at. And I think for me, it was because on some of the topics, I mean, there were just things that we were not connecting about, right? So it was just, we had a completely different view of how things should be, meaning from like an authentic standpoint. And I couldn't really get in line with these things. So, I mean, there were definitely signs that were telling me something's wrong here. And I just often said like, shh,
right.
I don't hear it. It's gone. And so that's, I think that was that.
Good.
Then I think on the side of kind of, you know, other people saying to me like, what's the matter with you? And me saying, yeah, what is the matter with me? It's a strange one for me, because actually when it comes to other people, I have no judgment for that kind of thing. I mean, if somebody says, you know, I want to do this or I want to do that, I think, oh, good, that's great. You know, you go ahead and do that if that's what makes you happy. And I think I really didn't know that I didn't like what I was doing. I think I'd never thought enough about, you know, is this something that really brings me happiness and connection? And I think it was only once I started to really ask myself, why do I think going to work for so many hours, working so long, you know, staying away from my family, working myself to the bone, why do I think that's good? You know, and when I got clear on, no, those aren't things that I value, then I could say, no, what I value is, you know, connectedness and these other things. And I could then stand up for myself and say, that's important to me. I'm not crazy. It's what I want. You don't have to want it, but I want it. So I think does that kind of answer your question on that one?
100%. That's exactly what I was looking for, because setting aside those opinions of others that we have come to either rely on or trust or value, trying to push all of that aside after decades of listening to people, whether it be friends, family, influencers, mentors, letting that go and coming to the conclusion that what we need to feed our soul and our bank account, what we need may not be what they think we need.
Yep. I totally agree.
Particularly for those of us who are people pleasers, it's difficult to set aside that opinion without fear of being ostracized or let someone down if that's the case. So thank you again for your insight on that. The next question I'd like to ask you is, how does an entrepreneur know if they are in fact aligned with their business? Because what I've often seen with clients that come to me, Anita, is they're super passionate about their work. They've found their uniqueness. They know that this is what they need to do. This is their purpose. And they go into the entrepreneurial world with this incredible amount of passion, but they have no idea what it means to run a business, to be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur. They don't have that passion about the business that they do about the services and the products that they're offering. So how does one know if they're aligned with their business?
I think that's a very good question. And it's not always totally a straightforward one. I think the thing is, when you're in misalignment, it will show up. It will show up in your business life, or it will show up in your personal life, but you have to be listening for it. And a lot of times entrepreneurs are working so hard at getting their business to work that they're just ignoring the signals, right? So I think there are different kinds of indications. You really have to look for clues. I think a lot of times, if you think about how you're doing your work and how it's making you feel, I think that's already a very good indication. So if I can give an example, for if there's a coach, right? Let's say there's somebody who's doing some coaching and they've listened to their favorite guru who tells them, you need to do kind of these group calls in these kinds of video settings. Maybe the person sets that up, and then every time it's coming to the times of the call, they're actually feeling like they have a knot in their stomach.
Yes.
Right? They're apprehending the call. And it's difficult, because often what will happen is a person will say, instead of, figuring out what the problem is, they'll often say, like, either I'm doing it wrong, or that guru's recommendation just isn't for me. And then they move on to the next thing. And they have the exact same problem, but in a different way.
That's right.
So I think it's a lot about seeing how your clues are showing up, and then kind of figuring out, what's really at the heart of the problem. Does that make sense?
It does. I can give you an example of one of the clients that I was working with recently. She had paid a small fortune to a guru, so-called expert, which I'm sure that the person is an expert, and what they were professing and teaching worked very well for them. However, my client was expecting to get the same results as this expert did, even though they were vastly different. And the small difference was, the expert was saying that she really needed to get on stage and get in front of groups and conduct 2 and 3 day events and do everything live. Well, the poor thing was just scared to death to be on stage. It was just not in her skill set, or really her desire to do so. So then she started to feel like a failure, not enough, and her business wasn't taking off. And she came to me in sheer desperation. And what we came to discover is that she was really a techie. Mm-hmm. She loved that whole aspect. And so we set her up doing webinars. Oh my gosh, her business just thrived. She thrived. She loved being on screen, not necessarily in front of a group of audience. People live. She could still have an audience of several hundred people, but she was doing it via a webinar, via technology, and that put her in her comfort zone. So what I've discovered is, to your point, oftentimes if we just make a minor shift, it doesn't have to be major, but just a minor shift of the platform perhaps that we're using for the delivery can make all the difference in the world.
Right. I totally agree. And I think, there's a difference between feeling a little bit of discomfort at something new, it's normal, right? It's normal as soon as you kind of get out of your comfort zone to feel a little bit of apprehension. That's not the same as, dreading the call, feeling like you have no energy, getting knots in your stomach, having physical reactions like that, right, should be a clue to you that there's something in the formula that's not working for you. So.
And what I'm hearing you say is we need to listen not only to perhaps the thoughts that we're having, but also listen to the messages from the body and from our soul that are so valuable, and to your point earlier, so easily dismissed.
Oh.
Good. So next question. If some of the viewers today are feeling like they might be misaligned with their business, what can they do? What's the next steps that they can take to start to realign or perhaps discover alignment for the first time?
I think it's in a little bit what we've touched on already. It's really about listening to these clues, right? So acknowledging like when you're actually having these feelings and taking note of it, right? Giving yourself the time to think through that process and say, okay, I notice that every single time I'm going to get on camera, I'm feeling really tense. Now, I've done this lots of times now. Is that really something that should still be happening? Or is it maybe something that I don't particularly enjoy, right? I mean, I think people get very stuck on the fact that if an expert tells you do it this way, that you have to do it exactly that way. And I think that's exactly what you were talking to, this point that you're talking to about the client that you had is that, finding the right combination of things where you're taking the best part of the expert's advice and using that for yourself in a way that works with what you are comfortable with. That's what's going to give you the results. Because if you keep trying to do something that doesn't work with how you feel inside, you're never going to have success, or you're never going to enjoy that success, let's say. You might get some success with it, but you won't actually be embracing that, right? You're not going to carry that on for the long term. So yeah, I think people should be, it's easier said than done, but people should be less afraid of embracing who they are and what's right for them, right? This is a lot about the uniqueness that I think that you talked to, Susan. It's the fact that changing that part of the expert's recommendation that suits you is what's going to make you stand out rather than fail. Does that make sense?
Absolute sense. I think you and I have talked about this before, Anita, that when we strive to mimic or replicate someone else, then we're competing with them. But when we are 100% in our authentic self, our uniqueness, we have no competition because there's no one else exactly like us. They might offer the same services or similar services or products, but they're going to be doing it differently than we are because they don't have our combination of skills, experience, personality, attitude, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's to that point, and what you were talking about earlier in both you and I in our corporate life, it was a struggle. Mm-hmm. It was work, and it was work. It was difficult. And what I've come to appreciate is that when I'm in my zone, in my genius, my uniqueness, there is no struggle. Yeah. It's a natural ease and flow that is at times still quite surprising to me. It's like, you mean it can be that easy? Because I'm so accustomed, or was accustomed to, the struggle. So that would be one of the additional comments that I would make about looking for red flags. If you see yourself constantly in struggle or pushing or working way too hard for disappointing results, then that would be an indicator to me that you're not in alignment with your higher self.
I totally agree. And, I think something that is also very interesting about that is you just said, when you're really in the zone, you feel fantastic. And what happens to a lot of us is that as soon as we feel good about what we're doing, we dismiss it. We think like, oh, that's way too easy. There's no value to that. Nobody's going to care about that.
That's right.
And we just don't know yet that that's exactly what we're good at, So I think that's also something that people have to kind of get their head around, that it's not because it's easy that it's not valuable. Do you know what I mean?
Right, and that's one of the messages I received when in my formative years is that if it is easy, it isn't valuable.
Yeah.
In order for something to be of value, you have to really work hard for it. You have to struggle. You on and on, fill in the blank. So one of the invitations that I would make to our viewers today, in addition, kind of the overriding message is, start asking yourself, what does success mean to you? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Success in business, in your personal life, in your health, in your well-being. What are some limiting beliefs perhaps that you're carrying with you from your past that are not in alignment with what you want your future to be? And asking those questions, doing that internal investigation, if you will, I believe is one of the avenues to discovering what you really want to be doing and how you really want to live.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think, and it's the one thing that we totally jump over. We don't ever spend time enough really asking ourselves those questions. And granted, you know, we start a career, we get into the things, and we move so forward so quickly, and kind of go with the flow. We're always looking at the next thing to achieve, so we don't really take the time. And also, people forget that you evolve through life. So, you know, what was maybe okay and interesting for you in your 20s, maybe in your 30s was not feeling the same way, right? And going into your 40s, you're going to be looking at something else, or even further. So it's something that, it's an ongoing process. It's not something that we just figure out one time and that's it. So I think we have to kind of revisit on a regular basis, right? To make sure that we stay aligned. When you're aligned, it feels good. When you're not aligned, it doesn't feel right. And that should really be a red flag for you.
And yes, it is that simple, isn't it?
It really is. We just have to learn it and accept it, right?
We don't have to make it difficult.
And once you acknowledge it, you just think, what have I been doing all this time? Like, how could I not have known, right? But it's something that, I mean, it's society. It's the way we're brought up, right? I mean, it's all of these influences. And it's probably the lack of the taking the time from our own side to really think about it for ourselves. So
a comment I'd like to share, Anita, is when we were first talking, you mentioned in your corporate life that you have this maternal sense of you, this nurturing component that was not being fostered in the corporate arena. In fact, you were asked to be something very different from that. And what I hear you saying in part of your journey is that you have embraced that nurturing, that maternal aspect, not only now in your business, but also toward yourself. I feel like you're very caring and aware and compassionate about your needs and respectful of the importance of meeting those. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, actually, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think you're absolutely right. I think up until I kind of went through the experience, I really did disregard it. I applied those kinds of rules to other people, but not to myself. And I think now I would say that you can't apply that really appropriately to others until you apply it to yourself. So I think once you accept it for yourself, you can stay firm in what you believe and what you want for yourself. And then you have no problem kind of saying, this is what I want, and no, I will not listen to you telling me, you know, not to be maternal or not to be whatever, right? It just comes out of you. You can't stop it.
Would you also agree, Anita, that now that you are in alignment and you have embraced this uniqueness and the all aspects of who you are, that you find it easier to establish boundaries and easier to make decisions?
Oh, definitely. Actually, I think it's made me powerful, if I can say it that way.
Do tell.
Yeah, I feel like where I would have second guessed a lot of stuff in the past, I feel confident about my decisions, and I don't have any qualms about saying, no, I've done my work for today and I'm going now to be with my family, right? And it's funny because that's the other thing, is that we often in a corporate setting are influenced by people, you know, having that look at their wristwatch like, oh, you're going already, or them, you know, people sometimes wanting to set meetings at very late hours, which just doesn't make sense when they could have been done earlier in the day instead of the person hanging around the water cooler, right? So, I mean, when you feel confident about who you are and assuming yourself that way, then you have no problem kind of you don't have to go against others, but you just kind of set the boundaries for yourself. So you operate within your boundaries. And I think that's very powerful.
Love that. That's terrific. For me too, the second guessing, oh my gosh, I could rethink something 15 times before I could make a decision. And that absolutely drove me nuts. And yet that's what I had to go through until I had the clarity of I can make a decision and be confident that it's the right decision. So it's almost an inner sense of knowing. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And even if it's not the right decision, that it's okay to make mistakes, which is also a very novel concept sometimes in the
Oh my
gosh. I think
gosh.
entrepreneurs, you have to embrace it, right? I mean, in entrepreneurship, you make mistakes all the time, and you fall down, and you get back up, and you keep going. And I think corporate could learn a lot from that, right? So,
Absolutely. Do you find, Anita, that the clients that you're attracting today are coming to you for something very different than perhaps they did a few years ago?
the people that are coming to me are very much in touch with the fact that they're not in touch with themselves, which is, I think, something which is completely different than what you would have seen a few years ago. I think this is a new trend, and I think it's a great trend. I think it's something that society is much more open up to this kind of approach, right? In the past, it would have been like, what is the matter with you? You're definitely in burnout. I mean, I think people are definitely more aware that they have a choice, right? And I think this is something that I love about the online world, I have to say. I mean, you can really do it your way here, right? And I mean, you can do what feels right, and you can do something that you love. And I mean, that's one of the things that really excites me about what's going on in the world today. I mean, I think internet business levels the playing field, right? You can pay a lot of money. You can try to throw a lot of money at, advertisements or whatever. But at the end of the day, people see very quickly, do you have good quality content? Are you providing the services that you're promising? Are you really authentic about what you're doing? Are you really interested in helping them? I mean, people see right away, and I think that makes all the difference. You don't have that same kind of opportunity in some of the traditional businesses, right? So.
Oh, you and I are kindred spirits.
I think so. I think so, Susan. I thought so from the first time I met you. So.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Now, do you find this trend that you're mentioning, do you find that it's international because you work with clients all over the world?
Yeah, I think in Europe, it's still not as obvious for people. It's a little bit different in Europe, right? Because there are some different approaches to working. I mean, I think in America, people work a lot. They don't take very much vacation. They have very long working days. That can certainly be the case in other countries too. In a lot of European countries, there are laws about working, about how much you can work, about how much vacation that you take. We still have a lot of stores that are closed here on Sundays, or they close in the evening at 7 o'clock at night. So there's a little bit of a difference on that side. But there's still a lot of pressure in the workplace, and there's not a lot of acceptance of feelings, of emotions. I mean, you still are expected to kind of keep a stiff upper lip and behave in a certain way. So it's not in very many organizations yet where you actually can kind of embrace being different. I don't think that's not really gotten through here so much yet.
One of the things that I've noticed in making the transition from corporate into the entrepreneurial world, and this kind of is aligned with what you were just saying, is that in corporate, there was a culture. The organization had a culture, a personality, if you will, and you were expected to embrace that personality, that culture.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed is when a person steps out of corporate and into the entrepreneurial world, they seem to miss that, that whether they liked the culture or not, it gave them a sense of belonging, if you will. Stepping into the entrepreneurial world, that was missing. And one of the points that I make, particularly with my new clients, is when you're just starting out, you are creating your own culture. Mm-hmm. You have that opportunity. Now, that culture obviously needs to be aligned with your uniqueness, your personal beliefs and foundational convictions. It has to do with family. It has to do with life and lifestyle. So you have the opportunity to create an environment that is conducive to being a successful entrepreneur and having a life you love. Mm-hmm. In your journey, Anita, particularly in the last couple of years as you've gone through this last transition, have you created your equivalent of a culture?
Yes, I mean, I still have a foot in corporate, so I'm on both sides. And I think that I would have to say I've actually brought that even into my corporate side. So I've built a little, I've built my own little world around me, if you will, on the corporate side. You still have to respect, the corporate norms, but you can do things in a way that are sincere to who you are, right? So, and then on the entrepreneurial side, for sure, I think what comes to mind for me is this image of when you're in a corporate setting, you have these kind of boundaries that are pretty clear for you. And I think once you get into the entrepreneurial side, you kind of lose the walls. The walls break away, and it feels like that. Like you feel like, oh, I'm falling. And I think you have to, instead of leaning on that, you actually have to stand up straight and say, no, here I am. Like, this is my spot. This is my space. This is what I'm letting in. It doesn't have to be such a boundary around you, because you have your spot. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, and I appreciate that. I just looked at the clock, and we have gone way over on time, Anita. But this conversation to me is just so powerful and so much spirit in it. And I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's late in the day for you.
My pleasure.
Are there any final comments that you'd like to share with our viewers, or suggestions or tips or encouragement or invitation?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't feel good, if you're listening to this and you don't feel good, that there's something that you need to find out. One of the things that I was thinking about in preparation of our talk today was, how to help people kind of in a simple way. And I've put together actually a quiz, which is to help people kind of figure out, where the problem lies. I think one of the things that we didn't talk too much about is when people get into entrepreneurship, sometimes they try different things. They kind of dabble here and there, and they're not always very pragmatic about, is this really aligned with who I am? And so sometimes people might be doing something because it's kind of the wrong process, right? Like, so if this guru mentioned this thing, sometimes it's even the business. And maybe people have a certain amount of success, but if things are really sticking, then it could be as far as being in the wrong business. So I have a little quiz that I'd like to make available to people, if that's okay for you. And that it's simple and short, but it's meant to get you to be thinking about, where you could be kind of having these hangups and what those kinds of clues could mean for you. Would that be okay?
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, that's incredible. And we'll be sure to include the link in the post with this so that people can easily get to it. This questionnaire, at the end of the time, after taking the questionnaire, what indicators do you think people might receive?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I mean, when they go through the quiz, the way that it's set up is so that they can basically determine kind of, am I looking at a problem in terms of things I need to tweak in my own business? Or am I maybe even at the other end of the spectrum and saying, I really need to think long and hard about if this is the right business for me?
So thank you for clarifying. I actually misunderstood, so I appreciate that. And what I'm hearing you provide with this quiz is permission to ask yourself some really important questions and get honest so that you can, in fact, have perhaps a business and a life you love.
Exactly. That's a fantastic way to put it. Totally.
Awesome. Any other comments you'd like to share with our viewers before we leave, Anita?
Okay, so this is the last thing. It's part of the quiz offer. What I would like to offer is for the people who download the quiz and take it within something like 3 days after the interview comes out, I'll do a drawing and somebody can win a chance to do a 6-week program with me, which is focused on gaining clarity. So I offer it because I know people like me need a little bit of a kick, to get you to do stuff. So if that can incent people to go and do it and look at it for themselves, then I'd be happy. I'd be happy to offer that.
Oh, so. That is so generous. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. All right. We need to wrap this up. I so appreciate reconnecting with you. Thank you again, Anita, for taking the time to share your uniqueness and who you are with our audience today. It's always a delight.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, Susan. It's been a lot of fun.
It has. You and I could talk for weeks.
I think we could. Yeah.
All right. So that brings to a conclusion another edition of Fabulous Feature Friday. I'm delighted you were able to join us today, and I certainly hope that you take advantage of Anita's offer because I'm going to, because I'm curious. I need to know these things. As she mentioned earlier, we are never done on this journey. It is lifelong. So thank you for viewing. Thank you for being a member of our Facebook group. And until next week, bye for now.